Hi, I'm Steve Clemens, and I have a question. Will Biden's uncompromising support for Israel cost him the votes of anti-war Americans this November? Let's get to the bottom line. Poll after poll indicate that the majority of Americans are dissatisfied with the Biden administration's handling of the Israeli scorched earth campaign in Gaza. The International Court of Justice has found that Israel is plausibly committing a genocide in Gaza, but more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed since that ruling. And the shortage of food, of water, shelter caused by Israel's siege of Gaza is getting worse every day. Many Americans are protesting the administration as it not only staunchly supports the war, but it's supplying the weapons and providing the diplomatic cover for Israel to pursue its plans. Now there's talk of a temporary pause, mediated by the White House, but no permanent ceasefire. So with elections 9 months away, will Biden be punished at the ballot box for his support of Israel's war? Today we're talking with independent presidential candidate Cornell West, one of America's most prominent philosophers and activists for racial, social, and economic justice. Let me just start out, Dr. West. You are running for president of the United States. You have launched a new political party. I'd like to just start out and say, if you were president, you were in the White House, how would you approach the Israel-Palestine crisis right now?
Well, you see, I'm deeply concerned about trying to find a space for morality and spirituality and political courage in a world of overwhelming barbarity and bestiality. And so I'm running to be head of the American empire in order to dismantle the American empire. America should be a dignified and decent nation among nations and not an empire that other nations defer to. So what we have in the Middle East right now, and especially in Gaza with my precious Palestinian brothers and sisters, we've got a level of psychic, spiritual, military, physical violence that is just beyond description. And that's usually the sign of an empire in deep decay and decline and dissolution and disintegration. Because when you get a shift from one imperial center, and once that America's being decentered, you usually get certain forms of intense violence, like the genocide against Jewish brothers and sisters, our precious Jews in 1940, in the early 40s. That was a sign of the decline and decay of the European empire. Then a new era was in the making, and that new era produced the Soviet Empire and the United States Empire. Well, right now, Gaza in many ways is a pivotal moment because it's a sign of the lack of credibility, the lack of legitimacy of a world that's been dominated by the U.S. empire. And I, speaking as one who comes out of the bowels of the American imperial beast, that is to say, black people, like indigenous people, have been the underside of the American empire, deeply committed to morality and spirituality, telling the truth about the American empire and its satellite countries like Israel, keeping track of the crimes against humanity, keeping track of the war crimes, keeping track of the crime of genocide. And so to be in a campaign, which is nothing but a moment in a movement of a people. And keep in mind, my dear brother, 1953, it was black folk who brought the United States to the United Nations and said, we charge genocide. That was the great Paul Robeson. That was the great William Patterson. That was the great W.B. Du Bois. These are towering figures in the history of the American empire, but anti-imperialist, critical of the empire and its various forms of domination and degradation. So for me, it could not but be a choice to be in solidarity with any peoples who have been victimized by the U.S. empire. It could be overthrowing Guatemala, overthrowing Iran, overthrowing Panama. We've got a long history of U.S. imperial interventions in the world, Haiti and so forth and so on, killing Lumumba in the Congo. Well, right now, we have Israel and the United States intertwined in what? An enabling of an execution of the crime of genocide. And so I run as a presidential candidate and being very honest and saying, Joe Biden, You're a war criminal. You are enabling the crime of genocide. Kamala Harris, Lloyd Austin, Blinken, Sullivan, Kirby. I speak to you as American citizen to American citizen, but also as a Jesus-loving, free Black man who's trying to find moral and spiritual space in a world of overwhelming bestiality and barbarity. That's what I see in Gaza. So I cannot but raise my voice, but also raise my voice in a context of the transformational forces and tendencies taking place on the globe.
Right.
And of course, we know this is not new.
Right.
We as human beings, we are wretched and a wicked species, organized greed, institutionalized hatred, and forms of indescribable indifference to the suffering of the vulnerable has been part and parcel of our history ever since we emerged from the caves in Africa. Right. But we're also a marvelous and we're also a magnificent species. We can fight, we can dream, we can laugh, we can love, we can grin, we can sing, we can organize, we can be in solidarity like what is happening right now in Gaza, and my solidarity with them is forever.
Cornell, I want to play a clip for you of President Biden talking about the $100 billion aid package that he's wanted to direct military support to Ukraine, to Israel, and to Taiwan. Let's listen for a moment.
Hello, my name is Daniel, and I made this painting, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So my class.
And when we use the money allocated by Congress, we use it to replenish our own stores, our own stockpiles with new equipment. Equipment that defends America and is made in America. Patriot missiles for air defense batteries, made in Arizona. Artillery shells manufactured in 12 states across the country, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, and so much more.
Now, he's talking about the economics of war and the jobs that are connected to the bombs that are going to Israel to drop on Gaza. I mean, your thoughts?
Well, you can just see how morally bankrupt that is. He's trying to appeal to my fellow citizens in terms of their economic interests and not a mumbling word about moral principle or ethical integrity or the damage done to precious human beings in those parts of the world. It's an example of trying to somehow hide and conceal the ugliness, the underside of imperial policy by appealing to people's economic interests at home. And we already know them. If we wanted to tell the full story, at this point, it's 62 cents for every dollar that goes to the military-industrial complex. The United States has not declared a war based on its Congress since World War II. Every military incursion has been proceeding out of the executive order without congressional approval, and that's been Democrats, Republicans across the board. But that's what empires do, like the Roman Empire, like the Ottoman Empire. We can go on and on. Military overreach abroad, corruption of elites. In America, that's the case of both parties. Citizens feeling desperate, citizens feeling impotent, helpless, hopeless, and usually succumb to some neo-fascist Pied Piper, in this case, the case of Donald Trump, but also feeling as if the only alternative to that neo-fascist Pied Piper is war criminals in the Democratic Party who act as if they want to save the soul of a nation and yet enable genocide, who act as if they want to defend democracy and are anti-democratic within their own party, anti-democratic in terms of those bombs that they sell that are dropped on children. What is it now? 13,000 priceless, precious children, and those Palestinian children have exactly the same value as my child, exactly the same value as white children, or Chinese children, Iranian children, and so forth. That's the end and aim of a freedom-fighting project that tries to provide some moral and spiritual space where political courage can be enacted to raise our voices, and we keep track of the indescribable barbarity and bestiality. And that's what we're seeing right on our screens every day. And I thank God for this channel. At least you all continue. You see, in America, the corporate media has turned away from the bestiality and the barbarity. Every once in a while, there's a story now on Gaza as if there's not an ongoing genocide. What kind of a country is America at its worst? An imperial project concerned with narrow economic interests and concerned with geopolitical expansion. What is America at its best? Martin Luther King Jr., Edward Said, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Dorothy Day, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. We can go on, and I'm trying to make sure that America tries to stay in contact with the best of itself, which is, of course, the best of the human spirit, which is all about love and justice and integrity and honesty and solidarity based on morality and a spirituality that has to do with recognizing that our narrow narcissisms and narrow chauvinisms can lead us off the cliff. And that's a long story that goes all the way back. The Hebrew scripture goes all the way back to Egyptian formulations, the Book of the Dead. It goes all the way back to Sophocles and Aeschylus and Aristophanes.
Well, let me ask you something that may be happening in America right now, is that younger voters seem to be tuned into the crisis in Gaza, that their support for the Democratic Party and for Joe Biden has declined. I don't know if they're going to rush to Donald Trump. They may run to a third party. They may run to you. But I'm interested in the fact that they are paying attention and that there's something going on generationally where young people don't remember the Cold War. They don't remember American empire as you framed it in the same way. And I'm interested in whether your message, you feel it's resonating with them, and do you feel that this is the moment where many of those people are going to reject both of the major parties and go elsewhere?
Oh, I think that's very true, my dear brother. I mean, we shall see, but I do feel that. And as you know, I do 4 or 5 events every day and have done over 500 and some interviews, and I can pick up the geist, I can pick up the spirit of the empire and the spirit of the nation. Young people are tired of the lies that hide the crimes. And this is true among our wonderful young Jewish brothers and sisters. Look at If Not Now, Jewish Voices for Peace, and even many Jewish voices beyond those organizations. They're tired of the lies and crimes that have been, the lies told and the crimes hidden. They've been told to them by their parents and their grandparents and so forth. We're seeing this more and more among everyday young Black, brown, indigenous, Asian young people. And so very much like 1960s, where both in the American empire linked to crimes in Vietnam, people are awakening, but this awakening goes far beyond the narrow talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is part of the right-wing toolkit to attack progressives in the United States. But we're not talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in any narrow sense. We're talking about truth. And the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. We're talking about justice. And justice is what love looks like in public and what tenderness feels like in private. It is a human affair, much deeper than skin pigmentation, much deeper than religious identity, much deeper than national affiliation. That's why my solidarity with my Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza, I do that as a Christian, as a Black man, as a citizen of the U.S. Imperial Republic. Why? Because the humanity always cuts deeper. And I've said on many occasions, if there were a Palestinian occupation or a Palestinian crime of genocide against Jews, I would be in solidarity with my Jewish brothers and sisters. It is a moral and spiritual issue, and that's crucial. If Black people were treating white people the way white people have treated Black people, I would be in solidarity with my vanilla brothers and sisters. It's a moral and spiritual issue. Well, right now, who is being subjugated, who's being degraded, whose humanity is being thoroughly called into question, who is being viewed as if they're less than human, treated as non-entities, as if the deaths of all of those precious babies and children and women and men can be just tossed aside and you get some kind of reflection on narrow economic calculation of a Joe Biden. Please, please, I have no patience for that. Irene and Clifton West and Shiloh Baptist Church and the Black Panther Party shaped me as a teenager, and I will be true unto death. I'll be faithful unto death, trying to tell the truth and be in deep solidarity with any people who are oppressed, let alone those undergoing such vicious genocidal attack right now.
I want to ask you, Dr. West, about...
Want to create lifelong memories for your family this summer? Then take them on an authentic safari.
the soul of this nation in a different way. The state of free expression. We just saw the president of Harvard University, where you had a lot of tussles too, in fact, both dealing with Palestine. You a decade ago, Claudine Gay more recently, but also another dimension, which is about running and giving people options that are running for office, giving those choices. There are a lot of folks out there trying to stop you from running. And I'm interested in how you see free expression in the soul of the nation from your perspective when it comes to the debates we're having today and the election you are running in.
Yes, well, my dear brother, the anthem of Black people is lift every voice. And it's not lift every echo, but lift every voice. And it reminds you of line 24a of Plato's Apology, where Socrates says, the cause of my unpopularity was parrhesia. Well, what is parrhesia? Plain speech, frank speech, unintimidated speech, fearless speech, speech that is free, that comes from your heart, mind, soul, and body. That's what it is to lift your voice. And of course, you hear it when you listen to an Aretha Franklin, or you listen to a John Coltrane play a saxophone, or you listen to a Mary Lou Williams play her piano, let alone a Duke Ellington or a Count Basie. They're raising their voices. Now that's freedom at its deepest level. Now, I am a libertarian to the degree to which I have a profound commitment to free speech, even with those with whom I have deep disagreements with. I defend people's right to be wrong in public conversation. That's why I have so many dialogues with right-wing, centrist, liberals, far right, and of course, left-wing, because we have to all lift our voices, be able to enter public space without humiliation, and have enough respect that we learn and listen and grapple. Now, there's always operations of power that's structuring the context, but free speech is something that's crucial, and it is under very, very intense attack right now. I was so sorry to see my dear sister Claudine Gay lose her job given the vicious attacks that took place, and it was unfortunate that she was so relatively weak in responding to the question about genocide of Jews. She should have just come right out morally and said, of course, any genocide, no matter who it is, no matter who it is, Tutsis, Armenians, anybody, needs to be called into question.
Ceasefire now! 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 Every time media lies, a neighbor.
A name on one arm. In an instant, bodies double. Just remember my name. No war, just genocide. All I know is genocide. All I know is stay alive. All I know is stand and fight. No war, just genocide.
Knocked down the door, broke in, threw your furniture across the length of the street, beat up your mother, imprisoned your father, and told you that your house is now theirs. What would you do if you were told that for the rest of your life you were going to have to live in a cage, be sieged? What would you do if someone shot and killed your brother for simply being who they are?
Me and my brothers are scared for each other, so we always try to be together, because if we die together, that will be the best thing, because we can still see each other when we go to heaven.
For decades, the Israeli regime has presented itself on the international stage as a victim. And to Palestinians, the image that was communicated to us is that of a completely different reality. The Israeli regime does not waste an opportunity to intimidate us, to instill fear within us. There is this strong man image, not only to intimidate us, but to reassure the Israeli society, who frankly needs our suffering in order to feel safe, needs images of our misery, of our bloodied and bruised young people to feel safe. Growing up Palestinian in occupied Jerusalem, it feels like you have a police officer in your bed and a police officer on your couch and a police officer in your kitchen. There is so much surveillance of every aspect of your life, be it your social life, your political thought, your activities at school, your activities on the street. They are telling us if we dare even think to resist, we are going to be clamped down on. You grow up in Palestine and you hear about the Nakba, which is the mass displacement of the Palestinian people at the hands of Zionist militias that would later form today's Israeli military. But the Nakba is not in the past tense. It's not a tragedy that once passed that we commemorate today, but it is in fact ongoing. For 75 years, the Israeli government has worked to ensure we no longer existed. The homes they demolish, the villages they depopulate, the children they kill and imprison is the evidence of this. The material evidence is on our bodies. I know this firsthand because when I was 11 years old, a settler organization backed by the Israeli military broke into our house. One of a few organizations that are registered as charities, either in the UK or in the United States, that collaborate with the Israeli government to take over Palestinian houses all over occupied Palestine. In 2009, I was coming home from school to find all of our furniture scattered across the length of the street. I saw that my grandmother had been hospitalized.
This is my grandmother.
أنا إلي عايشة بالبيت هذا من 1956. يوم من الأيام ما شفنا إلا واحد جاي يقول إنه هذا بيتي هذا أرض.
There were dozens and dozens of soldiers. And that the settlers had taken over half of our house. 10 years later, they came back to take over the rest of our house and the rest of our neighborhood.
Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
It's quite an absurd situation to find yourself in, right? American or British nationals who are often fleeing fraud charges or sexual abuse charges who come to occupy Jerusalem to squat in our houses as if they are theirs by divine decree, as if God is some kind of real estate agent.
There's only one sovereign body here. There's only one people that have a connection to this land. There is no such thing as a Palestinian people, no such thing as a Palestinian state, and there's no such thing as any sovereignty by anyone except the Jewish people here.
Living on the brink of displacement almost distorts your sense of time. Your entire perception of the world and your reality becomes wrapped up in these court hearings and in these settler campaigns and these harassments and these police raids. And it's not just the psychological and emotional damage, it's the financial damages, it's the loss of time, living your entire life without having any agency almost. My whole childhood revolved around going to the court hearings and having my father come back from the court hearings and thinking when they would finally come and take over the house, and if we were able to buy ourselves some more time. You never knew if that day would be the last night you ever sleep in your bed. I remember we would go to the court hearings, and as the lawyers and judges deliberated, we would whisper in each other's ears shards of what we thought they said. It's almost like being a zebra at the mercy of a jury of hyenas. My grandmother used to say, if the judge is your enemy, to whom do you complain? The judge himself is a settler, and the court is a settler court, built on top of Palestinian land, and the laws are settler laws that were enacted to facilitate and bureaucratize and legalize the process of your own ethnic cleansing. The fact that there are Palestinians who can smell the humidity of the sea from their kitchen windows but can never go to the sea because there are dozens of checkpoints that separate them from it is violence. The fact that there are Palestinian kids in Lebanon, in refugee camps, who listen to their grandparents detail their past lives in Jaffa, in Yafa, in Haifa, in Nazareth, who look at those photographs and yearn to visit, but can never visit, is within itself violence. There are 5.3 million Palestinian refugees in refugee camps today who long to return to their homeland, and their exile is within itself violence. Our ability to remain steadfast on our land is a form of resistance. The fact that we get sent dozens and dozens of settlers who get salaries to sit in our front yards, to terrorize us, to make our lives a living hell. The fact that we have to deal with police brutality at all times. The fact that we have to deal with a myriad of laws and laws that are there to displace us, to ethnically cleanse us, to erase us, to silence us, to put us in jail, and yet we are able to continue is amazing. People like the word resilience, but I think we're very stubborn. And our ability to be steadfast and to stay where we are, and our ability to cope and deal with the horrors that none of these Americans or British nationals that spend their lives defending would tolerate living under for 1 second. All of these defenders of apartheid, all of these defenders of Israeli settler colonialism, if they had to come and live in our reality for 1 split second, they would not bear it. British politicians, American politicians, German politicians, they are not mere supporters of Israeli colonialism in Palestine, they are partners. Of course, they are not going to talk about Palestinians' right to self-determination, the same way they are not going to talk about Palestinians' right to resist or Palestinians' right to defend themselves. It's the same reason why they see no issue in talking about a nuclear state's right to defend itself from an unarmed population, as though that makes any sense. It is absurd that the world today has been duped to believe that one of the most lethal armies in the world, one of the most highly funded armies in the world, a nuclear state, is somehow defending itself against a population of refugees that are kept in an open-air prison, that are kept surrounded by a 9-meter-high concrete wall that swallows their land and tears their families apart. People hear the word colonialism and they think of something that is long gone in the past, and they don't realize that it exists in the present tense, in my front yard, in my neighborhood, on my street. There are Palestinian villages that today are being uprooted to be replaced by settler towns. There are Palestinian roads and cemeteries that are being desecrated to be replaced by military outposts and police departments. Colonialism is not something that the world has rid itself of. It is alive and well and eating at the land in Palestine. When we think of colonialism, all of us have a moral clarity. We know that it's bad, we outright reject it. And yet when we look at colonialism in Palestine today, this is a complicated issue, this is a nuanced issue, this is a touchy topic, it's a sensitive topic. We're not allowed to talk about it because it might ruin my career prospects. But need I remind you, across history, opposition to atrocities has not been met with applause. People who opposed injustices, who opposed colonialism, who opposed slavery, were not met with congratulations and red carpets and applause and awards. In fact, they were targeted and attacked and censored and smeared and persecuted. It is not easy to be on the right side of history. It takes courage. Ignorance is not the problem, it is inaction. Everything I've said here today has been said by hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Palestinians before me. And it is about time that something is done about the 75 years of Israeli settler colonialism in our lands. It is about time that we move on from trying to debate something so clearly indefensible and try to create some justice for the Palestinians that are living today. It has gone on for too long, and we deserve this justice within our lifetime. It's easy to look at people like Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela, and think of them as courageous icons who must be respected. What is difficult is looking at an injustice as it happens in real time and deciding that you want to take a moral stance, that you want to be on the right side of history. Those of you watching this today have a chance to be on the right side of history. But the question is, are you going to take it? It's time for us to center Palestinian voices instead of completely coddling and uplifting the voices of Israeli politicians. Palestinians who live under occupation day in and day out have all of the analysis and the insight necessary. It's time for journalists to start doing their jobs by centering Palestinian voices instead of being stenographers and state secretaries for the Israeli regime.